Hey everybody, this is Tim Anderson, Programming Coordinator for the Florida Film Festival, and welcome to the Q&A session for Shorts Program number 2, sponsored by eClat Law. Big shout out to those guys for supporting this festival and these incredible filmmakers. Due to a quick technical glitch, the beginning of this program was not recorded, and you'll be joining us in progress with the filmmakers from Pizza Party, Gabriela, Bruiser, Must Love Pie, Plaisir, and the producer of The Other Morgan. So thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to vote for your favorites, and we'll see you soon. Awesome. And Tessa, hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tessa Hope Slovis. I am the writer and director of the narrative short Pizza Party. And Pizza Party answers the question of what would a pizza party filled with sexual assault survivors look like?
Yeah, Pizza Party is crazy. I mean, everybody watching it, I imagine, is trying to decipher what's going on for at least the first 6 to 7 minutes of it. And then I think you start to fear what's going on. And then when you find out what's going on, it kind of ruins your day a little bit.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
No, thank you. No, it was amazing.
Sorry.
No, it's an incredible short. Miles, welcome.
Hi, I'm Miles. I'm the director of Bruiser. And Bruiser is about a kid who sees his father get into a massive fist fight in a bowling alley, and what that does to him in his search for his own masculinity. So, yeah.
Laura, welcome. You're the producer on the short.
Yes. My name is Laura Schwartz, and I'm a producer for The Other Morgan, which is a comedy short about how no matter how happy you are with your own life, how you're always going to be comparing yourself to someone else.
Yeah, this is the ultimate, like, grass is always greener, except that the greener is, like, the other you.
Yeah. It's a very bizarro world, for sure.
I love that. And Molly, welcome.
Hi, everyone. My screen says Maureen, which is a secret that I realize is now being made known. But my name is Molly Gillis, and I'm the writer-director of Plaisir, which is a narrative short about a young American who joins a commune in the south of France.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you guys so much for coming out. Kat, Stephen, do you guys want to kick off with any questions that you might have for everybody?
Oh, you're not shutting me out this time, Steve.
I'm not shutting you out. I'm letting you talk this time.
Yeah, he's not going to talk.
So, I'm going to go to Tessa. So Pizza Party is, I mean, it was, how did you decide to tackle this type of scenario and dive into the backstory of the Larry Nassar, well, I'm assuming it's Larry Nassar, sexual assault victims?
Yeah, so it's like sort of, I really can only call it kismet, like in terms of timing. So I was actually an MFA acting student over at USC. I'm in Los Angeles right now, and I was in my 3rd year of acting training, and we had this filmmaking for actors class, and we were tasked to write a single location short. And I had always written narratively, but I had never really tackled screenwriting before. I'd done short stories, personal essays, stuff like that. And it was right at the kind of tail end of the 2017 Nassar trials, and there was all this kind of, the documentaries are coming out, and I was particularly interested in Believed, which is a NPR podcast by Michigan Radio. If you haven't listened to it, it is absolutely fantastic. It's about systems of belief, especially when it comes to young women and girls, through the lens of the prism of the Larry Nassar trials. And then I am also a sexual assault survivor in the context of college and university sexual violence and assault. So I felt very connected to the Nassar trials. And then I was also tasked to write a film. And in the podcast, this is crazy, there's like one 5-minute little part of one of the episodes that talks about how the litigators threw a little kind of get together for the survivors the night before the trials began. And I was like, what does that look like?
Yeah, what is that like?
What is it? And then I thought about the ideas of like carbo loading before a gymnastics meet, and then also the dynamics of young girls and food and their bodies and taking ownership over their bodies through, after such tragic trauma, happens to you. So it was all there in this weird, crazy time. And I wrote it for class. And actually the draft I wrote for class was pretty much what it is. And my professor was like, who plays Max actually in the film, Gene Gallerano, he was like, no, we're not making this in school. Like, you're going to make this and I'm going to help you make it because you're a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Sorry about it. And I did, and now I'm directing. So it was kind of a crazy, but it really was timing. It was all timing, and then it was so personal for me. I write a lot about the complex dynamic, the dynamism of survivorship, and how it's not just kind of after school special sob story narratives. Like, it's strong and funny and complex. So that's where it all came together.
It's a phenomenal film. We saw a lot. I mean, Kat and Stephen can attest that we watched a lot of films this year, an incredible amount, more than ever before, I think, that dealt with sexual trauma and survivorship. And this was, we put basically one essentially into each program. But there were, I think, 12 of them in our final selections meeting that all felt like they deserved a place at the table, but only so much you can kind of maybe put an audience through as well. But this is just incredible. And I think what I'm really proud about the fact of the 4 that got in is that they represent the dynamics of that in very different ways. But this one, we were all just like kind of jaw open.
Well, and also we put your short at the beginning of the program, and when we were building the shorts program, we were like, all right, let's start with Pizza Party and then try to recover emotionally after that.
Yeah, usually we would end with something that we feel like we can't follow, but we did try to figure out the best way to recover directly from that. So we actually are recovering with Yaruga, who's unfortunately the filmmaker couldn't make it, but is an incredible short about an old man and his turtle, which was the most dynamic change we could make.
Right, but Pizza Party's, just a fantastic opener, though.
Yeah,
because because you gradually becoming more informed as it goes along, as this horrible revelation dawns on you as you're watching it, and the film ultimately is so devastating. And even Tessa, the way you listed the numbers in the credits up to the 150s or whatever it was, just added to that. So you're to be commended for the way this whole film was put together. It's tremendous.
Thank you so much. Ultimately, it's about hope and solidarity too. I'm so sorry I interrupted you.
No, not at all. I just want to say, while we're like, I definitely want to talk to everybody here on the panel today, but I just want to say that obviously, like, your movie is it's incredible, and everybody who performs in it is amazing, and it's crushing. I think the thing for me that maybe was not the most upsetting part, but the thing that really kind of ground me down in watching it in a good way was, it opens and you see this room full of women, and it's such a diverse collection of women. They're all different ages, all different races, all different backgrounds, and they're all in this place together, and you want to be so hopeful for it. And very, not quickly, but you soon realize that sadly in the world that we live in, there's just not a lot of reasons that would bring all these women together into one place. And then when you figure out what it is, it's just soul crushing. And I really appreciate the way that you tackled this subject and managed to inject a vein of hope throughout it. When on the surface, like, if you were to describe this movie to anybody, like, just plot wise, this event's happening, everybody would just go, "Oh my God, that sounds so grim." Yeah, but I don't know. There's still it comes up at the end, just this glimmer, and that's a real subtle touch, and I appreciated it a lot. Sorry, I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that.
No, thank you. It's an honor, really. Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk about another short that disarmed us completely in here, and I'm going to take that over to Patrick, who's essentially made the worst rom-com like ever.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
This is a story where I'm actually a little bit interested in where it came from conceptually as well. I know it seems kind of a cliche question to ask, but this has such a different dynamic than I was expecting. All the way to the absolute last moment of the film, it keeps screwing around with my expectation of what's happening.
Oh, thank you, Tim. That's really nice. I hope it feels a little fresh.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, we watch rom-coms and I love them. And I just thought, you know, I was in grad school and I always looked at all my projects as an experimentation and trying to try something fresh and different and surprising. And because I had written this little treatment about two people that fall in love over dessert, and they have that awkward date where you disagree with something, and like in my own weird way, which is sort of unnatural, but hopefully feels sort of natural. And then my producer said, you know, usually all my short films, somebody dies or there's some tragedy. And I said, well, we could try that too. So then I liked an idea of sort of flipping the rom-com sort of on its ears and trying something a little unusual, and hopefully people, because I haven't seen it in a room, so I don't know how those, you know, the film got finished just before COVID, and so
Yeah.
I'd be curious how it plays in the room, if people get it, but it was an experiment, and I think it worked pretty well. I think I'm very pleased with it. And as far as where the film really came from was, well, one, I'm not brave enough to make movies like Tessa makes. I wish that I was more brave, because I basically hide because I'm fearful of addressing real issues in a direct way, or I'm just not. I don't think I'm just not brave enough. And I love those films. And I went to Columbia, and there's all my classmates make these beautiful films that really address current issues, and I'm so envious that they're able to do that, where I'm in the corner making a little pie movie. But I did try to, the film is when we make stuff, we make it for a lot of different people. Hopefully the audience watches it and it's a fun movie with interesting characters going through something and we can relate. For me, it was a film, it was a parable for the artistic life. So this was the thing that interested me the most at its core, which was, you know, we live in our little caves, and I look out the window and I see a world that I don't really understand, and I feel like doesn't really have a place for me in it. You know, I feel separate from that world. And I walk outside, and very quickly I'm reminded that all my fears are true, you know, that I walk out the door, I take a chance, and I get hit by a bus or something, you know what I mean? And so then I go back into my little cave, but I keep walking outside every time, hoping that it's going to be different, and trying to connect to this place and these people that I really don't feel connected to. And so that's really what the film was. The impetus of the film for me was that, and then I hid it inside this funny story about cake and pie and great actors and subtle comedy, and so that's what I find the most joy out of watching the film, is that I was able to get this thing that I wanted, which was this sort of study on isolation and loneliness. And
I mean, your lead actor he's phenomenal, and he brings so much to the table, because at the end of the day, you have so much empathy for him, but he kind of screws you over at the end as the audience, because he's kind of not empathetic. He's kind of like a sociopath a little bit.
Kind of. I just think he's a human being. I think again, in these rom-coms, we tend to we sort of create these idols, these representations of human beings.
Yeah.
And we went through that last line 100 different ways.
Yeah.
And there was ones that were harsher, and there was ones that were softer. We just felt like we wanted him to go on another date.
Yeah.
We wanted him to feel as much of a happy ending for him as possible.
I mean, I think the matter-of-fact nature of how he delivers it is the part of it that sells it so well. If he delivered it as in a punchline, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And all of our actors are non-actors. There's only one person in the film that's really an actor, and that's the waitress, who was in a couple other short films of mine. But they're stand-up comedians in Wichita. I found him. I typed in funny guy, Wichita, Kansas, and he had won some stand-up, because I live close to Wichita, but I live in the country, so I'm like 2 hours away, so I don't know a lot of people in town. So he had won like he was like the funniest man in Wichita in 2007 or something. And then
Like a
that's how I
T-shirt that
also,
says that.
yeah, and that's also how I met Megan, because they're best friends.
Oh,
So
nice.
the two characters know each other in the stand-up community in Wichita. And I couldn't have asked. They just did a tremendous job for non-actors. I couldn't be more pleased.
I feel like
So
that's
was
bringing up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matthew.
I was going to say, so was the film basically completely written before you met him and cast him?
Yes. So I originally wrote the film for a pair of seniors. So I wrote the film thinking I was going to cast two 80 to 90-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then very quickly realized that was impossible. And that if I had still been in New York at school, like maybe I could have found somebody, but in rural Kansas, it's just, and I like casting seniors anyway, but, so then I had to look for an alternative, casting. And Danny, he's a big boy. And we had long conversations about what's the audience going to think about a film that has a food element, and also he happens to be a larger guy. But that's not really what the movie's about. The movie is just about Danny as a person happening to like desserts, So, but no, basically the film that we shot was ultimately, he added he contributed some stuff to the film, but no, it's basically, I could reshoot the film with two 80-year-old actors, and I think it would work just as well.
I want to jump down and ask Marina a question real quick, and start on my French is terrible. So Plaisir. Was I close? Pretty close.
Yeah. No, you nearly got it.
I've just been calling it pleasure because I know what it means.
Yeah. I think that's probably easier for everyone. But if you didn't know, the English translation of plaisir is pleasure.
Yeah, I had 3 years of French, and then I went to Paris, and I was literally like the guy who was like, I can't say anything to anybody at this point. Your film really struck me when I saw it the first time, as a film that is so incredibly confident in the story that it is telling. It's just a movie that the dynamic of like having sat here and watched it and just be walked out of the room is kind of stunned, and telling people like, this is such a simple story, but underneath of it, it's so many layers about accepting yourself. When you got this idea of like going out into the world to get the thing that you want, and then when you get there, you don't, but you learn something about who you are and where your path in life might lead. I do want to ask about the inspiration of this, but I also want to talk a little bit about your cast, because these are so natural that I also have been kind of wondering, because it seems like overriding theme this year is we have a lot of non-actors acting. And it just might be masterful acting, or it might be some people that you located. But I'd love to know how you found these people, this location, and then the desire to tell this really kind of incredible personal story.
So the location is actually a place that I had worked the year before. There's a organization called Wolf where you can work in exchange for housing and meals. And it's a really great way to see the world or travel the US. It's a global organization. So I, similarly to the main character, had shown up to the farm in that exact house that had not really been listed like appropriately. They had no photos of like the castle part. So I just thought it would be like, oh, like living in a yurt, but they didn't really show all of the rest of the space. So when I got there, I was amazed. And then I made really great relationships with the people that I was working with. And then I left and I wrote a movie basically inspired by the summer. And I'd taken photographs when I was there of the work that we were doing, and some of the they were building sweat lodges and different kinds of ceremonies that they would have throughout the summer. And I had taken some photos of that with their permission. And I wrote a movie based about the experience, and I asked if they would be involved, and they said yes. And so the next summer we got to go back, and I brought some crew, and I cast an American who's a comedian in New York. And I cast the role of Sophie because those are like performance heavy,
Yeah.
and the rest of the folks it was their first time being in a performing role, and so the two actors were able to drive, I think, some of the scenes, and there was a lot of improv I had written into the script based on what I had observed as like a volunteer there. So so part of it was like fiction, and then a lot was like, fiction based on truth. So but they were really, really collaborative. I felt really lucky to have their participation.
Yeah, it's just a lovely story. It's the perfect way to kind of end the program that we opened with on Pizza Party. Like, there was a real journey that we felt like everybody was going on if by watching this program together in a theater in order, and hopefully if you guys are watching it on home, watched it through from the beginning to the end. It didn't jump around. There's method to our madness here, but it's just so incredibly hopeful and joyous of a movie.
I was aiming for that. I think I really wanted to find like a sense of like liberation and through struggle, that I think hopefully lands in some kind of way. It's like a crescendo of sorts. I worked my way backwards. The ending scene was the first thing I wrote, and then sort of pieced it to arrive there.
Yeah, the ending scene, one of my associate programmers who saw the film just said that if you took nothing away from the movie, that it's okay to dance naked in the moonlight. And that's really just something. Like, and I kind of feel that way as well.
Especially since we're all stuck inside. I never knew that this movie would play right now. So I feel like there's a sense of like connection to the outdoors and like being free that we really are all craving. So it's hitting in a different kind of way.
Oh, beautiful. Natalia, this is such a lead heavy performance. Like, this movie lives and dies on your identification with Gabriela, and then obviously this incredible moment at the end that just like was again just a magic moment in movie making. I obviously want to know about the story of it again, but I also really want to know about working with Lucia, right?
Lucia Saul. I was very lucky to find her, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying it. She was rather green when I found her. She didn't have that much experience, but the script came first, the story, the question came first, and then the idea of bringing detail to the character, what her background was, and so I kind of knew who I was looking for, but I was keeping it quite open. And I started sort of asking around my network, of friends and collaborators in New York, if anyone might know someone who had, some of these details, not all of them. And I got several names, and I met several young women who were all wonderful. But then Lucia walked into the room, and I was just so initially surprised by her. She gave me things that I hadn't been expecting from her reel or from her photograph. And she had, I think being green helped in this case. There was a rawness to her. And because I have to admit, I had thought about trying to find a non-actor, but I think that would have been difficult. It is a performance heavy lead role, and it's asking a lot of the person. So I did decide to find an actor, but she brought some of that rawness to the room. And I remember she walked out, and I was working with a collaborator on casting, and I turned to him and he said, "We should call her back in," right? Like, we both looked at each other, and we did. And I worked with her a little more that day, and then I sent her home, and we started talking just initially, and I gave her things to watch, and I asked her to come in again and do some chemistry readings with some other people I had in mind. And I really put her through the ringer, I have to say, the audition process. And I'd never done that before. I'd cast on instinct before, purely, and I put her not only I had an instinct about her, but I put her through the ringer, and
Yeah.
I'm glad I did, because then when we walked on set, it was just like a glove, you know. She just really, and more detail was brought to the role because of her casting.
For sure. Laura, let me jump over to you real quick. A little bit about this film. It's a riot. And it's much like Must Love Pyatt, it lives on a plane of just absolutely razor thin awkwardness. A lot of that is brought to the table by Allison's performance in the movie as well. So can you tell us about Allison's decision to conceptualize and shoot this? Because as far as I know, is this the first thing she's directed?
Yes,
Okay.
This is her directorial debut. And so this project had come from the fact, she's kind of, has always been comparing herself to others. And she actually will admit she's like, will sometimes just Google her own name to look up what other versions of herself are out there.
Oh, that sounds terrifying.
I know, right? Especially with her name. Like, there's got to be a lot. And so this project just kind of came out from that. And when I first got the script, I just loved it because, like you said, I just love a comfortable kind of, awkward comedy in that sense that really just kind of makes you cringe a little bit sometimes. And I think this has a lot of it and does it in the best ways possible. And she also, being from the UCB world, we were able to really tap into that network to cast it and get some really great folks in there to make it come to life.
Yeah, that brings me kind of the other big question is, and I kind of hate this question, but so I don't usually pose it unless I know that like a third of the cast are like improv actors. So because I feel like it always seems like it's a slight against the script to say like, so how much of it did you let your cast just make up on the slot? Like as if you can't write. But this is one of the ones where I always kind of wonder about reeling in the personalities on set to kind of either keep them on page, on book, or do you just roll and thank God you don't shoot on film anymore because it's free, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah. I mean, I think, everyone was pretty good about kind of sticking to the script, and then we'd always give some takes where we'd ask them to improvise a bit.
Yeah.
I think the scene at the top with Allison and Chloe Wepper, who plays Brandy Moon.
Yeah.
That one, there was a little bit more improvisation, I would say, especially with when, the character of Brandy starts doing her song and everything.
Oh,
and
her song is gold. Like it should win the Oscar.
So good. That was definitely a moment where we were all like, okay, we're just going to figure out how to make this work. And I think, we had already built in time to make sure that Allison was going to be able to work with people and, get takes of improv so that we wouldn't have to rush it, because exactly with this group of people, like you don't want to lose that gold. But at the same time, we made sure to like get everything to script and then go, okay, if we have time, now roll with it. And I think, Mary and Jim obviously are such pros and have been in so much, like they just nailed it on like, as did everyone in this, honestly, on the first take.
I mean, the chemistry in this cast is phenomenal. And I mean, we literally were all texting each other about this song, like forever. So, I mean, it is sort of the ultimate, like kind of joke, but like works so well, like on it. Miles, I hated to leave you for last, but alphabetically, you're just last on the list, man. There is actually, in my opinion, a sort of dearth of filmmakers out there that are actually addressing father-son dynamics. And I don't, and we're talking about, we watch, 800 or 900 movies a year in domestic shorts. And these two, this character dynamic, this kind of observational dynamic between what this kid is sort of immersed in and sort of looking for role models or how to behave as a man in the future. This is done so well. I mean, you just nail this. And I guess first, there's going to definitely be a question about finding your young actor. But I also kind of want to know, like, just this. It's a still movie. It has obviously some serious moments of tension in it, but I'm curious on this one mostly about sort of the decision to take the tone
Yeah.
that the movie has.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I wanted it to be very like formally controlled. I didn't want to like, it's like with movies like this, kind of like the black father-son dynamic masculinity movie. There's a lot of the easiest way to do it is like handheld and like follow the characters and do it like that. And I wanted to add this extra element of like formal control. Like I was very inspired by like obviously like Kubrick's frames and that kind of stuff, or like Fassbinder kind of framing, just because I think it like provides this like alienation in terms of like the violence, because it's like what the kid is seeing, and like, and I was also influenced a lot by like World Star videos and like these videos of black men usually fighting, and then that going online and that being hilarious, and what would happen if the guy's kid was right there and saw it. So I think like film, like, and those videos are like very shaky and like intense. So I was like, well, what if you show this violence in this like very controlled, like methodical way, and this is how the kid sees it. And then same with like the ending when he's like, under the weight bar. It's like there's nothing to cut away to. I mean, I cut away to the dad's desk at one point, but other than that, it's like this is what it is, and I like kind of just showing it for what it is. And so like that, in terms of the way the style in which we shot it, that's kind of where my thinking was. And then in terms of like the tone, like the kind of like dread, the music was interesting because I my own dad actually did that. I did that with him. Nice. So that was like a father and son bonding experience as well. And I wanted something that felt intense. Like I wanted something that echoed what it would be like for this, like what it would feel like for this kid to see his father get into a confrontation that was that intense and almost like out of nowhere kind of. And I wanted it to feel, I wanted to have some stakes, because that's, when you're a kid and you see something like that, it's a little life-changing maybe. So
I think that's one of the things that kind of gets me on it, is that I think back to experiences like in my own life. It's hard to, you try to be completely devoid of your own personal emotions as you watch movies and critique them and think about what the audience is going to think about. So you think about like kind of moments in your life that are traumatic, at least because maybe I'm immersed in cinema. You almost look back on them in a way where it's a third person viewership. Like you're in that moment, you're there, but it all seems, everything around you happening seems to be happening. Somebody used to say it feels like it's happening in slow motion, but it all feels a little surreal, a little off, and it always seems a little more dramatic and scary.
Totally. And like just, that's basically what I was like trying to channel, where it felt, everything feels a little off, a little intense.
Intense.
Intense
is the word.
Yeah. And in terms of like the father-son dynamic, it's just something that's always interesting. I mean, my relationship with my father is like very good, and like we collaborate artistically all the time. But I think it was more of like me trying to like channel times in my life where I've been very angry, or I've like done something that I probably shouldn't have, with like giving into my anger, and then channeling that into the movie, you know what I mean? And then using that in like a classic father-son dynamic, because family is like the richest place to tap into for stories,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
If you don't mind me jumping in.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve, and then we'll open up for everybody.
Yeah, sorry. Miles, as a guy with a complicated relationship with his father, I really felt a lot watching your movie. It's very intense. But what I wanted to mention was, like, I think in this age of social media, I think it's very easy for all of us, and I've engaged in it, I'm sure, to share these little snippets of video. Everybody finds them so hilarious to see, people fighting in a Burger King or something like that. And I just really appreciate the way that you reminded us that everybody involved in these videos, everybody in one of those little videos is probably having the worst day of their week, if not their entire life. And we're seeing them at their worst, and we're laughing at them because we have no connection to them. And you really remind us that they're part of these networks, that they're human beings with lives around them there. And I was wondering, was that like a real a deliberate statement that you wanted to make? Because I think it seems like the primary message of the movie is about the relationship between the father and son, and the son's struggle with masculinity, but this other thing is going on too. I just wondered how deliberate that was.
Yeah, no, that was one of the main things. I mean, I kind of I think I started with the World Star videos and then moved it into the masculinity story. But yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And honestly, like, I'm not even gonna lie, like, there's elements of humor, like, they are undeniably funny, like, sometimes, but they're also very horrific and scary and just like humiliating. And like that mix of humiliation and horror and comedy is like so weird, and I think it taps into something very human, like, of people like responding to them. And so like since I was like 15, like I was like, I need to make something that has that element in it, because it's fascinating to me. And yeah, I was like, I want to try to make a story that kind of, you know, like, again, like that's the same way I framed the bowling alley shot like that, is because I was like, okay, I want to show how ridiculous this also looks if you like take a step back, you know, like, it is funny, but there are like real world consequences to it, that could end up, you know, humiliating the father, and then in the same way, humiliating the son in his own search when he gets stuck under the weight bar, which is another viral video that I found online of a kid stuck under a weight bar, of like these like masculine endeavors, that are like both funny but like horrifying and sad all at the same time. So I don't know.
I wanted to ask a question about the weight bar, because I was holding my breath that whole scene. I was just like, so it feels a little voyeuristic, like I'm watching someone getting crushed by a weight and I can't do anything about it. But how long is it going to go on? Is he going to get crushed to death? And I think it was like the perfect amount of time to breathe a sigh of relief. But I was wondering if that had some root in a video that you had seen it as well.
Yeah, it was a viral video. It's literally almost exactly the same as in the short. Is like a kid is trying to like bench press a little too much and gets stuck under it and is just like screaming for one of their parents for like a minute. The video is way longer than, like, honestly, when we shot that in the like one of the first edits, it was a lot longer than what it is in the short, and people were like, no, you gotta cut it down. We cut it a little shorter, and I think we like found the sweet spot. Yeah. But yeah, the viral video it's based off of is like 2 minutes long, and it's really intense. And all the comments are like, "This is hilarious," and I was like, "This is funny," but you put it in a context where you follow this character and you see what's come before, it's not funny in the slightest, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I would love to take the last sort of 10 minutes of this, open the field up to all of you. No permission from me. Feel free to just jump in, ask each other anything that you kind of want to know about someone else's film on here. I find you guys have the best questions. So, all right, someone be not shy.
Sorry, my internet cut out for a second, so I'm sorry if this is a repeat question, and let me know if it is. But Patrick, I was actually wondering about your casting. I thought your character actors were just fabulous, and I wondered how you found them and what your process with them was.
Yeah, and I actually we talked a little bit about it. I also have a question for Miles and Molly too, that's sort of in that same vein, because I really liked their casting. I'd be curious about other people's sort of philosophy around casting. Briefly, mine is I spend a ton of time casting, in part because when I'm on set, I'm interested in other things than, I'm not really a performance director. I mean, I like to gently guide, but I really like to just hire the right people and let them do their job. So like, I like to spend a ton of time casting to make sure that when I get to set, it's the right person for the job. And because like, especially in film school, I went to acting classes and like to direct actors, which I always thought was like, it's sort of a silly idea, which is like, for me to try to get an actor to do a thing that they're not doing, which I always think is weird. So anyway, so I spent a lot of time casting, and unfortunately I had a very small pool of actors here. I live in rural Kansas. The town I live in is like 500 people. So I don't have a lot of options. So I really got lucky to find Danny and Megan are both stand-up comedians. So they brought stuff to the table. They didn't get camera shy because they were used to like basically public speaking and being in front of crowds. So I got really lucky. But I'd also like to, again, turn it to Molly, right? I know it says, yeah, Molly and Miles, because I'm curious how the casting process was for those films as well. And Natalia, I'm curious about everybody's casting.
Miles, you want to go first, or?
I'll go first. Yes, my casting process was interesting. The main kid, his name was Noble. He hadn't done much, and I just kind of like liked his look, and I liked the way he talked. He was very like matter of fact. But there was like a lot of work to be done with him, but a lot of the process, because we shot on film. We shot on 35 millimeter. And it was very low budget, so there was a lot of rehearsals, because every time I said act, you could like hear the money just burning. You can hear the literal film going through the camera. It's scary. So we did a lot of rehearsals, and I think that really suited Noble, because he got very good at just delivering all of the lines. Like he's one of those kids who just got better and better. He wouldn't have been good if I had just said, go ahead. And we had to get him to like cry and stuff. And he was just like very, like, it was just, he was one of those people that I just had to talk to him for like 30 minutes and about himself. And then he would just like be able to take it to a place where he could feel emotional and like start tearing up. And then I'd be like, get in, everyone start rolling, which was interesting. I'd never, I'm a younger director, so I've done one more short before this. So I've never had a character, let alone a kid, like have to like be emotional. So it was a learning experience for me too, of like 30 minutes on set trying to talk to this kid to see like what makes him, or how to get him to a place to be emotional. And then we had JD Williams, who's fairly established. Lucky to find him, and he was down to help us out. And he was great. And I think he was a little annoyed that we had to do so much rehearsal, because I don't think he liked doing too much rehearsal. But we just had to because of film. And he was like great, and he was very like, he was just like super professional and helped out so much. So yeah, it was a pretty standard, like Noble just showed up to a casting call, and we just hung out, and he seemed like a great actor. And so yeah.
What was it like?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, just as a follow-up to that, what was it like working with such a young actor and talking to him about the subject material?
Yeah, because so hard. Kids are so hard. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I would talk to him, and he would. I was never sure if he was like fully like understanding it or not, and I was like, I'd constantly have to be like, I'd have to like really explain what's going on. He'd be like, okay, cool. And I'm like, did you get any of that? But then I would say action, and then he would just get it. And I was like, whoa, so I don't honestly, I don't think I ever figured him out, but I got the performance. So I'm going to be honest. Yeah. Like he was a mystery, but I think it was just about like being honest with him and making sure he at least knew what he had to do for the scene and what was important. JD was also like really helpful too in talking to him, because that relationship was like the main crux of the movie. So like I had him and JD like hang out a bunch and talk, and I think that was a good move, because they were on the same page. So.
Molly, you also, the question was to you a little. I mean, you touched on your casting a little bit already, but
she was just absolutely spectacular. I thought she was she's got a great look, and I thought her performance was very strong.
Yeah, I felt really lucky with the casting. I think usually feel uncomfortable maybe in like traditional casting sessions. So I wrote the movie for Eleanor. It was before I had a script that I approached her. Am I breaking up? Oh God.
A little bit.
Your audio's clean, but you're
a little bit?
jerky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just ride the wave.
All right.
Yeah, so Eleanor was a comedian, and I had approached before writing the script, and I asked her if she would be involved. She's like an alternative comedian here in New York, and she was down, and so I wrote the movie for her, and I think that helped everything feel like a very authentic world, because I wrote it for her voice, and she like is a dancer, so like all of the dancing was like stuff she just does in her life, and so it was able to like really bring some of her like actual personality into it. And then the actress who plays Sophie was my clowning teacher in undergrad. She's like a French clowning instructor. She'd never been in a movie before, and something about like the clown, I was like, she and Eleanor had something in common of like being a comedian, being a clown, like understanding that like self-deprecating like sensibility, but also like desire for like acceptance in a huge way. So they really hit it off, and we had not much rehearsal because I was just trying to get everyone to France. So I really was like, I think really hoping that it was going to work out, and like that I could create like a recipe that when everyone was together it would work. And I think similarly to Miles, like really responding to like when someone was ready to go, like, oh shoot now, like go which really, I think being in a position to work that way, I feel really lucky because you can't always do that. But I think it helps in a lot of ways to like create an environment that people are just sort of able to relax and relax in front of the camera, be a version of themselves, if that makes sense.
Well, I actually want to jump in on that too, since the only person we ever really talked about casting at all, either here or before, was Tessa. And obviously you have two main kind of characters in your film. And as much as I'm interested in them, I'm actually more interested in everybody else you got wrangled together to be in the room.
Yeah. I have the privilege of having been an actor in the business for 20 years. So these are all every
favors.
Every single background actor actually is a professional working actor. I shot it in New Jersey, my hometown in Montclair, New Jersey. And every single actor, some of them are professional actors that got referred to me that like no longer do background work, that are doing films, themselves and working all the time. But they all, because it's primarily women, they all read the script and they all were like, done, we're in. And every single person on that set had a personal connection, whether they were survivors, whether they had, family members, whether they, like every single person came to me and told me stories of their own survivorship. And so that it was pretty magical and really, really special.
That's incredible. I don't have words now anymore. I ran out of words. I know.
I did love your background, but that lead number one. Whew.
Yeah.
Such humor and like warmth and genuineness, but also such pain. Amazing.
Jen is just phenomenal. And it's so funny. It's like the opposite of Patrick. I come from acting. So I actually didn't have the technical language. What I had was I can go in and we can be in here and I can ask you the questions and we can get to that place together. And I'm like behind, I'm in Video Village. Like, this is how I direct. And I'm like, yeah, like I'm so emotive because I had the gift of working with her, who's just, she is just like stellar. She is down for anything. And she was referred to me and I had her do a couple of takes. And my thing is if I don't do a long audition process. This was my first film, but like for her, it was like, I sent her takes. I sent her some notes that had nothing to do with the story, to see if she could take those notes. We had a couple other actors up, and she flew. I mean, flew. And I can tell you, Jen, I will be working with her forever. She is just delightful. Yeah, amazing.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I know we've been on here for a while, and I imagine everybody's got something to do. So this is an incredible program, and you know, we put it together, but you guys make it, and it's a testament to the talent that's on this this Zoomcast right now. That I mean, every single one of these movies has just absolutely floored me with what we watched and what we put on. And so thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for, you know, the insightful information you gave us about your films and the personal stories that you told as well. I would remind the audience that this program's up for the duration of the festival. Make sure to vote for your favorites for the Audience Award. Tell all of your friends that these are like 8 of the best shorts you've ever seen, and they all need to be watching them too. And we'll catch you on the next one.